5 essential occult films that you will want to watch over this Halloween period. So the first film on my list is from 2011 and is Ben Wheatley's Kill List. Now this film, as many others in this list, is criminally unseen. So directed by Ben Wheatley and co-written by his partner Amy Jump, this film stars Neil Maskell, Michael Smiley, who you would recognise from things like Spaced, and my Anna Buring. And without giving too much away, the film is basically about a retired soldier who joins back up with his old friend to get back into contract killing. And it very quickly starts to spiral out of control. It's a very, very claustrophobic film, and really from the very opening scene, it just has this overwhelming sense of dread. And the ending on first watch, certainly for myself, I was really caught off guard with it and didn't really fully understand it because I hadn't caught all of the clues from pretty much the opening scene that leads right up to where this film actually goes and completely goes out of control. Now, in terms of the occult themes, there's a lot in this film and pretty much all of Ben Wheatley's films, whether it's A Field in England, whether it's his segment in ABCs of Death, and even some of his slightly more mainstream films. I feel that there is occult reference through pretty much all of his work, apart from Meg 2, which personally I would recommend that you avoid at all costs. Now, one interesting aspect that I personally took from this film is that if you understand the journey of the tarot, going from card 0 right up to card 22, and you maybe use your imagination a little bit, I do feel like the journey of the film and the main character really takes you right the way from the start of the journey of the Fool and right the way through to the conclusion, which I won't go into too much because it would give away huge spoilers, but we have massive references to certain aspects of this journey and to the tarot cards, particularly the Thoth tarot cards, which are very slightly different to the Rider-Waite cards. But I would highly recommend watching this film, and if you are strong enough to go through repeat viewings, I find it more and more rewarding each time, and the clues as to what is actually going on and the witchcraft that is happening in the background that then suddenly reveals itself at the end really does sort of set the scene, and you understand this whole process and what you're saying in much more detail. The second film on my list is Roman Polanski's 1999 film The Ninth Gate, starring Johnny Depp. And again, this film is very overlooked, was pretty much trashed on its initial release, and I just don't think people understand the themes of the film and also the tone that Polanski and Johnny Depp are actually going for. Now, the film is actually an adaptation of a book called The Dumas Club, written by Arturo Perez Reverte. And as I said before, this film stars Johnny Depp, and his character Lucas Corso is a rare book collector and trader. He collects books and sells them to the rich and famous. Now, he is contacted by Frank Langella's character Boris Balkan to find an incredibly rare book. And like the previous film, this is where things start to move out of control of the protagonist to the point of he's been dragged into situations that he doesn't fully understand. Now, the book that Johnny Depp is hired to track down and to validate that it is an original text and not a copy is the De Umbarum Regus Novum Portis, which translates as the 9 doors to the kingdom of shadows, or the 9 gates for short. Now, to quote the almost villain of the piece, Boris Balkan, from the actual film, he says that the 3 copies of the 9th gate form a kind of satanic riddle, and correctly interpreted with the aid of the original text and sufficient knowledge of the occult, you can actually conjure the Prince of Darkness in person. Now, interestingly, the film itself does take us through the journey of each of the 9 gates, and you're never fully sure, and I won't give away exactly what happens at the end, but you're never fully sure of what is fake and what is reality, which books are fake and which ones are real. And you follow Johnny Depp's character on this journey, and he's assisted potentially by what could be Lucifer, which I personally think it is, and that is interestingly played by Roman Polanski's wife. But I would highly recommend giving this film an opportunity. The tone is very odd at times. It almost switches between classic horror to slightly strange Euro comedy. The music choices are very odd. The editing's very disjointed at times. The sets look really odd at times. And I know I'm not making this sound particularly interesting, but for me it all contributes to this very, very strange and unique film that I think is more than worth spending a couple of hours with. The third film on my list is from 2016 and is quite well known and respected within the occult community, but is still not particularly as well seen as what it should be. And that film is 2016's A Dark Song. This is the debut feature and is written and directed by Liam Gavin. And this film, for me, has probably the closest to real occult ritual that we've really had in any film. It is not entirely perfectly representative of how this ritual is done and the approaches that you would need to take to complete this ritual, but it is very, very close in parts and is a very, very good cinematic, thematic representation of what this ritual is and how to do it. Now, this film is centered around a lady called Sophia, and without again giving too much away, because this film is absolutely more than worth watching multiple times, she is basically seeking supernatural vengeance following the very possible murder, certainly disappearance of her young son. And she hires Joseph Solomon. Obviously, the surname is very on the nose. And he's basically her last resort. And other occultists have tried and failed. And she's basically putting all of her savings, all of her money into hiring Joseph to basically go through this ritual with her, to teach and supervise her so that she can contact her holy guardian angel, her HGA, and to get vengeance on the people that have effectively murdered her son. Now, if you look at similar representations of the Keys of Solomon or other occult practices within cinema, then we have to look at things like Doctor Strange and all of this stuff that is sort of largely derived from Dennis Wheatley, and people just sort of put a robe on or put a hood on and read from a grimoire, and basically demons appear or angels appear, and then they get what they want. It's sort of Harry Potter style cinematic entertainment, but nonsense nonetheless. And the thing that really struck me with this film is it's very, very patient. It takes its time with the characters. The film is essentially two people in a house. And it really shows the patience and mental strength and focus that people have to have. Now, just as a slight aside to this, a lot of people obviously link the themes of this film and some of the practices with Aleister Crowley's work. And a lot of people go back to Aleister Crowley's autobiography to trace his experience with this ritual. And personally, I think this is a very, very poor representation of Crowley. It's not very informative or close to the work that he actually did. I think it's some of his worst work. I would personally recommend The Sacred Magician as a book to look at, which really, really does cover this in a much more accurate and realistic way that magicians have to approach this kind of work. Next on my list is something that I'm sure many, many people have already seen. 1973's The Wicker Man, not the Nicolas Cage Wicker Man.
Oh, no, not the beast! Not the beast! Ah! Open my eyes! Eyes! Ah!
The basic plot of this film is a Scottish policeman arrives at a remote island in the north of Scotland after receiving an anonymous tip about a missing girl. The moment that he arrives at the island, things just seem completely off. The locals claim to have absolutely no knowledge of who the girl in the photo is. Sometimes they claim bizarre things like she never existed or that she died. And basically it's very clear that he is completely a fish out of water. Now, what we don't know until the end of the film is that from the moment that he arrives, his fate is sealed. The film is absolutely filled with particularly pagan symbolism everywhere, starting from the watchful eye on the boat to the mythical green man that symbolises rebirth. And the themes of rebirth are very central to the entire theme and journey of the film. Now, the symbolism is not just limited to paganism. We also have things like the policeman wearing the punch outfit or the fool. So he's literally wearing his own fool costume as he is on this journey. Now, the film on first viewing is obviously very disorientating, deliberately so, and you're never fully sure of what is actually going on, what people's intentions are, what reality you're actually watching, until that final scene. And if you haven't seen it, it's one of the most shocking and famous scenes in cinema, and please go and watch this film as soon as possible. Now, the final film on my list is from 2018 and is the remake of Suspiria. Now, I'm a huge fan of Argento's work and I love the original Suspiria. Seeing that on the big screen a few years ago was one of my favourite experiences at the cinema. But I think I slightly prefer the remake. I just think the characters are so much more fleshed out. There's a lot more depth to them. There's a lot more emotional impact with what's going on. And the witchcraft in this film actually has a purpose. And things like dance are incorporated into the actual rituals of the witches. Now, the reimagining of this film by Luca Guadagnino, and I hope that I've pronounced his surname correctly, it's a completely different approach to the original. Instead of completely overblown bright colours and sets that are beyond colourful and fantastical. This film is very, very muted. We have almost a complete inverse thematically and visually of what the original film is. And one really, really interesting aspect of this film is the way that the dark feminine is really explored. And there's a lot of imagery and themes that constantly come up throughout this film that could pretty much, in my opinion, it's never mentioned directly, but I believe that it does link directly to the goddess Kali. And if we look at some of the just thematic colours of the black, red and white that symbolises goddess Kali, and then we look at the main character here in her shibari inspired knotted outfit, I can see a very direct link there. We also have something very close to the silver crescent hook that is a symbolism of the evocation of lunar femininity. And I really do like how from the first film, dance is a very small part of it. The film is set within a ballet school, but dance is just something that the students are studying, whereas dance is the actual tool, the vessel that the witches and therefore the students performing the dances actually use these movements, this energy to perform magic rituals, whether it's for invocation or whether it's to harm someone, to control someone. It's all done through this really beautifully choreographed and visually stunning movement and dance. And the music is absolutely incredible as well, written by Tom York. I believe it was his first soundtrack work, and it just fits absolutely perfectly. And we also have, without giving too much away of the ending, we have themes of compassion and justice as well. So I would highly, highly recommend this film. Give it a chance. I know it's nearly 3 hours long and it's a remake, but I believe it's absolutely worthy of your time. Just for the performances of Tilda Swinton, who performs at least 3, but rumoured to be possibly 4 different characters within the film, and good luck working out who all of those are. So that's my list of 5 occult horror films. This is just my personal sort of favourites that are within the occult world, and they're not all strictly horror films, but there are certainly horror elements all the way through these films. So let me know what you think, and thank you for watching.